All right, we'll call the regular meeting of Township Council for the purpose of a public hearing to order. Mr. Richardson, you'll start with the preamble.
A public hearing. A public hearing is a statutory requirement under Section 464 of the Local Government Act and must be held before third reading of a community plan, land use contract amendment bylaw, heritage designation bylaw, or heritage revitalization agreement bylaw. During a public hearing, council acts in a quasi-judicial role for the purpose of allowing persons who believe their interest in property is affected by a bylaw, permit, or other matter to make representations to council, either orally, by written submission, or to add comments to or elaborate upon correspondence that may have already been presented to council concerning the bylaws. It is important to note that council is not able to receive any additional information on the bylaws following the public hearing as dictated by case law. The hearing procedure involves an explanation from the Community Development Division on the purpose of the proposed bylaws and to hear from individuals regarding the bylaws. In order to ensure that all interested parties have a reasonable opportunity to be heard, speakers are requested to keep representations as brief and succinct as possible and no longer than 5 minutes in duration, excluding the time required for questions from council. Speakers will be asked to state their name, neighborhood, and city for the record. And if referring to prepared remarks, to submit copies of these to the township clerk. Decorum must be always maintained. This includes refraining from applause, booing, or heckling. To assist with large numbers of speakers, individuals must advise the township clerk and sign the speakers list prior to the commencement of the public hearing. The names on the speakers list will be read out during the hearing. Individuals who have already addressed council and wish to add further submissions will wait until the people that have not yet addressed council have had an opportunity to speak. All submissions and speaker lists are considered part of the public record. Council members should not express their views nor debate the bylaws. However, they may question speakers to clarify particular points in their submissions. Council may consider third reading or third reading and final adoption at this meeting or at its next regular meeting. Thank you.
All right, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Call a question on A1. That carries unanimously. Mr. Richardson, first item B1.
Thank you, Worship. The subject official community plan, Murrayville Community Plan, and rural plan amendments pertain to lands at 22940 48th Avenue. The 10.17 acre site is designated rural in the official community plan, rural in the regional growth strategy, and small farm country estates in the rural plan. This air photo depicts a site located on the south side of 48th Avenue, east of 228th Street. Official Community Plan, Murrayville Community Plan, and Rural Plan Amendment Bylaw 6025 designates the site urban in the Official Community Plan, includes the site in the Murrayville Community Plan designated as institutional, and removes the site from the Rural Plan. Official Community Plan, Murrayville Community Plan, and Rural Plan Amendment Bylaw 6025 is presented subject to 3 conditions listed on page 4 of Council's agenda. Your Worship, a total of 127 notices were mailed out, 1 written submission has been received, and there are 2 individuals noted on the speakers list. And those are, Your Worship, Wells Macy and Garth Robertson.
All right, is Wells Macy here? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, for your time tonight. So my family and I are the owners of the parcel to the east of the subject property, which is 23004 48th Avenue. We are the same zoning and the same designation as the current property and in the rural plan as well. We purchased the property about 3 years ago. Our plan was to build our family homes on the property. Our kids go to school at LCS right there, and we have family close by. We became familiar with the church's application shortly after we purchased it. We ended up changing our plans and did not proceed with our building permits, which we're now fine with, of course. It would have been a big impact to be beside a big church, and you know what was a bit of a concrete, it's going to change the landscape for sure. But we changed our plans, we withdrew our building permit, and we actually spoke with numerous staff members, including Mr. Richardson, multiple council members, and other long-range planning staff. And our conversation led to a point of just saying, no, we totally see what's happening in the neighborhood. We do like what the church is going to be bringing there. We are obviously fans of what's happening with the school next door. But we do have concern that our property gets to an element of being orphaned with the subject application. So the requests are actually quite straightforward. We just have a couple items that we'd love consideration on if possible. The first you'll see, or you won't see up there, but the Hatchery Creek runs along our east property line, which creates this natural boundary between future residential land along 48th, south of 48th, and future institutional land to our west. The residual developable land along our west side of the creek is around 2 acres, which is realistically too small for Metro Vancouver to really prioritize on an individual application basis to then be included in, say, an RGS amendment. So our hope is that our property is considered along with the current application tonight when it goes to the necessary amendments at RGS and then the Greater Vancouver Sewage and Drainage District. And then secondly, consider that when the next door application at 22940 is doing their servicing extensions to their property, that some sort of capacity calculation is put into play for both sewer and water to potentially accommodate the future development of our parcel. We have actually just submitted an application as of this past week to parallel this subject application, which would be to amend the OCP, the Murrayville Community Plan, and the Rural Plan to include our land within the Murrayville CP to designate it as institutional for future institutional use. Our concern is that if servicing next door was done solely with their property in mind and not factoring in the creek and that natural boundary, that it's likely our property gets orphaned from future servicing, and it'd be quite tough to service, say 1.5 acres or so of land in today's costs and whatnot. And it would realistically, given that the subject property servicing is theoretically coming off of 228 through the Langley Christian property, it would be quite hard to extend to our property. So, albeit a strange request, we're hopeful that there's something taken into consideration that potentially sewer and water stubs could maybe be brought to our property line through their property. It would avoid a very complicated servicing plan for us. We recognize that latecomers would be applicable potentially. So just in conclusion, want to factor in our property potentially getting orphaned out of a Metro amendment given its size, and potentially trying to piggyback our property off of the neighboring application to be included in the Metro's RGS. And then secondly, servicing capacity, just make sure we just don't get stuck there with a great piece of land that could be a great daycare or something along the lines of institutional use, which we would love to see there, but can't be done because we are just a small parcel in an area that is restricted with Hatchery Creek there. So thank you so much for your time, and yeah.
I have some clarification questions.
Please.
Councillor Kunst, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Wells. How are you?
Good. Thanks,
Good.
Mark.
Hey, can you just highlight which property it is that's yours?
Directly there. Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Okay. So that whole piece there.
It's a 5-acre parcel.
Okay.
And northwest of the creek, I've had my enviro consultants on site. The top of bank is very defined because it actually drops down quite nicely to the creek. We've calculated that our net of setbacks is around 1.1 to 1.2 acres. That's with no flex on the 30-meter setback there. So.
And currently it's zoned.
It's RU1.
Okay.
RU1, I believe. Yeah.
RU1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, so your property, you've got an application coming forward for institutional as well?
The reason I submitted that is, yes, that's correct, Councillor Richter. I believe that was the right path, so that if tonight council said, why have you not submitted an application? It's tough to piggyback off somebody else's time and money. I wanted to make sure they understood that I was willing to spend the time and money to mirror their application. If you drive down 40th Avenue, it's actually a very natural divide there between land uses. And our property, especially that northwest corner, would tie in perfectly with the current application for the church, which we do support, and then Langley Christian School. It's a natural boundary between those land uses, and it would not be an eyesore. It would tie in perfectly. Contrary to if we had to build, say, a nice residential home, that would be an oddity on that usable land. And I'm happy to meet you there and show it to you if you'd like. So.
Okay, so basically, you're applying for institutional, but you don't intend to keep it as institutional?
Oh, no, the plan would be, we want to go down that path to institutional. Yeah,
Okay,
to mirror what's happening to the west of us and what the precedent's been set along there, yeah.
okay, but then your eastern boundary,
That would not be
Opens-
institutional. I think we would be, I don't think I can actually use any of that land there, so we're pretty certain that'll just be set back in wetlands. If there's any residual on the southeast corner, I would need my neighbor to be involved on that, and I don't know if we can, so,
okay, thank you.
thank
All
you.
right, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Mr. Richardson, I don't have the list in front of me. What was the next speaker?
Your worship, Garth Robertson.
Garth Robertson here. Please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Garth Robertson. I'm a director of Oakbrook Foundation. It's a charitable foundation, and we have to do with a lot of building of churches and private schools in the area. We have a current application on 44th, the existing now, which I've written to all of you about. And but I'm just wanted to speak and say we are in support of this application that's currently before council. We have always enjoyed the country that we live in, the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of worship, and we fully believe that applications like this should be considered and brought forward in an unbiased way. So I'd also like to say that being over 40 years in developing, occasionally developing churches and private schools, anywhere from Vancouver, Richmond, Surrey, Langley, and Abbotsford, that I have full confidence in the staff and mayor and council processes, that any concerns of the neighbors, any concerns at all are usually always taken care of and given their fair opportunity, and it's a good process. So any of those listening tonight or tomorrow remotely have concerns, I have like to say that we have a high level of regard for the Township of Langley staff and council and how they handle things. So with that, I don't have a lot of detail of the application, but just we are in support of it.
I
Thank you.
have a clarification question. Councilor Richter.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Robertson. Now, where is your property exactly relative to the subject property?
We have several churches in Langley. One of them is on this 48th. It's registered under the name of Christians Gospel Society. It's, if I recall the address, it's to the west more, 262, no, that's not right, 22636 or something like that.
Okay.
It's next to the Christian school, yeah.
Okay, so your property isn't directly affected by this rezoning?
No, it's just that it's a nice street to have churches on.
Okay. All right, just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure I
yeah.
understood. Thank
It's not directly nearby or impacted in any way, but just a good street. Earlier administration had pointed us to that street to go there and buy some property there and develop it, and they would support it.
Thank you.
Councilor Kunst.
Is it your school that's on Fraser Highway on just down, I think it's like 248th, that came up in last term, I think?
232. Our actual address is 23328.
Yeah, okay.
44th, which actually just touches Fraser Highway.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the one. Thank you.
That's right. So it's a recent build. Yeah, so we've
Yeah,
very
that was last term.
very successfully had all our young people in here.
Yes, I remember.
And we got a good applause on that. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
Are there any other submissions from the public? Is there no more speakers, Mr. Richardson, I believe, right?
No, Your Worship, that exhausts the speakers list.
Is there any other submissions from the public on item B1? For a second time, are there any other submissions from the public on item B1? And for a third and final time, are there any submissions from the public on item B1? Seeing none, that closes the public portion. Does the proponent wish to make any submissions to council? Seeing none, close the public hearing for item B1. Does anybody wish to move consideration of third reading? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Call the question on consideration of third reading. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation for third reading? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on B1? Councillor Richter.
Okay, I'm just wondering through you to staff, if this goes forward, the red line, will that need to be extended all the way down to Fraser Highway?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, so the application is only subject to the existing red outlined area. So the bylaw in front of council now just pertains to the red outlined area.
Okay, but the red outlined area is outside the current containment boundary, correct?
Correct. Should the application advance to third reading, the application pursuant to a previous council report would then be referred to Metro Vancouver for review.
Okay, and are there any applications pending for the land south of the subject property to remove it and put it in the Murrayville plan?
Not to my current recollection, through your worship to Councillor Richter, no.
Okay.
Unless the delegate indicated they had made an application to the east, that may be recent, it may actually be on my desk, your worship.
Okay, and do we know for sure that it's going to be a church that's put in there in institutional use?
Your worship to Councillor Richter, on the subject side?
Yes.
Correct, yeah. So the application now is to, as you mentioned, put the site within the urban boundary, designated urban in the regional growth strategy, align that with the township's official community plan for urban lands, and then also designate it for institutional uses. So it'd be specifically in the OCP for institutional uses. That's what the proponent has applied for.
Okay, and that could come up for reconsideration at some point and turn it into residential?
Through your worship, Councillor Richter, right now, if the application was successful going through the regional growth strategy amendment process and final adoption here by council for the OCP, it will be designated institutional.
Institution.
The subject application currently is just for that OCP amendment process. Council has full purview, should the application then come forward for a rezoning, to support or not support that rezoning. Likely, if they wanted to act on the institutional designation, they would rezone from the current RU1 zoning to a P1 type zoning for an institutional use, but council at that time would have their full purview and rezoning powers.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question on B1. That carries unanimously. Mr. Richardson, item B2.
Thank you, Worship. The subject Willoughby Community Plan and Latimer Neighborhood Plan amendments pertain to a proposed development consisting of 42 townhouses at 7510 and 7488 198 B Street. The 1.93 acre site is designated residential and multifamily in the Willoughby Community Plan and single family and townhouse in the Latimer Neighborhood Plan. This air photo depicts the site located on the southeast corner of 198 B Street and 75A Avenue. Willoughby Community Plan and Latimer Neighborhood Plan Amendment Bylaw 6145 amends the westerly 0.7 acre portion of the site from residential to multifamily in the Willoughby Community Plan and single-family residential to row house townhouse in the Latimer Neighborhood Plan. Rezoning Bylaw 6146 rezones the subject site from suburban residential SR2 to Comprehensive Development Zone 131 to accommodate the proposal. This site indicates the preliminary site plan with vehicular access proposed from 75A Avenue. Staff recommends support of Willoughby Community Plan and Latimer Neighborhood Plan Amendment Bylaw 6145 and rezoning Bylaw 6146, subject to 9 conditions listed starting on page 7 of Council's agenda. Your Worship, a total of 503 notices were mailed out, no written submissions have been received, and we have no individuals noted on the speakers list.
Yep, thank you. Is there any submissions from the public on item B2? And for a second time, are there any submissions from the public on item B2? And for a third and final time, are there any submissions from the public on item B2? Seeing none, close the public portion of the public hearing. Does the proponent wish to come forward and make any submissions? Seeing none, close the public hearing for item B2. Does anybody wish to move consideration of third reading? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Call the question on consideration of third reading of B2. That carries unanimously. Does anybody wish to move third reading recommendation? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion? B2. Councillor Richter.
Yes, so this particular application, were CACs under the old CAC policy collected?
Your worship, through to Councillor Richter, this application is coming to council with consideration of the CACs included in that package as part of council's report. So the current application includes those considerations. And given some of the discussions this afternoon and the current context of CACs, staff will advance those considerations in that light.
Okay, so it's coming under the old CAC policy, because we've got a new CAC policy, or a new amended CAC policy as of this afternoon.
That's correct, Councillor Richter, yeah.
Okay, so is this subject to the old one or the new?
It was submitted under the old policy context, and given the new interim policy, staff will navigate that given the outcomes of the court decision.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, call the question on B2. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Thank you.